Your job could be an asset. Oh, you're welcome back to another episode on IKEMS Finance. So, in today's section, we will be talking about basic things that it's required for one to know when it comes to wealth creation. What are those basic things? Those basic things are assets, liability, debt, and hedge. Now, these four things, but I will specifically start with assets and liability because we use these two words interchangeably. So most people do not know what it means, what these two words means. Most people do not understand the actual meaning. So most people call the wrong thing asset and the wrong thing liability. So let's look at it this way. The basic claim and description of these two words, liability and asset, is this. An asset is anything that brings money, inflow of cash flow, into your coffers, financial coffers. Whereas a liability is that which takes out money out of you but doesn't bring you money. There are some assets that are liabilities. And there are some liabilities that are assets. These are the things, they are tricky. I will go into that, but for now, let's start with the asset and liability. Let's figure out what is an asset, what is a liability. You can pick up a pen and paper or journal and list these things down. It doesn't matter, but just hear me. First of all, before I proceed, I am no way a financial expert or a financial advisor. I am just an ordinary Igbo boy who grew up in the streets of Aba, Nigeria, and spent his childhood working in his father's business. So basically, my childhood experience is getting off school and going to my father's shop. So that is it. Always do your due diligence. I do not give financial advice on this channel. Whatever I say is just what works for me or what I feel will work for you, but it's left for you to make your own decision. I'm not trying to influence you to make a decision, but I'm only trying to put it to you to understand what I'm talking about. So let's move on. Like we said, an asset is anything that brings in money to you. What are those things that bring in money to you? If you have a business and that business brings you cash flow, is an asset. Your job could be an asset. Could be, but not an asset. Okay, so we can make this mistake and call our job an asset because it brings us money. I've had someone say that. It's a job an asset because you go there, it brings you money every 2 weeks or every month, depending on what your time is with your employer. I've had people say that, and I look at it this other way. Well, your job can't really be an asset. It's just a job. Even though it brings you money every month or every 2 weeks, bi-weekly, depending, it's not really an asset. Your skill is an asset. What skill do you perform at that your job? That skill is an asset. It's that skill that is bringing money in, not your job. The skills you possess, the intelligence, your critical thinking, all these skills is what brings you money. Because without these things, your employer will not retain you. We get it? Now, if you have for those who have cell phones, if you use your cell phone for business, you need to make business calls. Is an asset to your business because it's a means of communication to your business that brings you much more revenue. It facilitates in bringing you revenue, businesses that gives you more money. That is one. Your laptop, if you are using it to perform tasks that generates money for you, your laptop then becomes an asset because it facilitates the process which leads to one and two and three that leads to bringing money into your pocket. If your car brings you money every month, then your car is an asset. If you do it monthly or weekly, independent, then your car is an asset. If your house brings you money every month or weekly, then your house is an asset. But if it doesn't bring you money, rather it takes away money from your financial coffers, then it is a liability. You can convert a liability to an asset by putting it to work to produce you income, cash flow. Oh, some people say cash is king. It depends. Cash flow, inflow of cash, depending. Now, what are ways we can use to put our car, that is, to my concern, for me, if your car is not bringing you money, that car is a liability because you're paying insurance every month, right? Yeah, it is a liability. Unless you're using that car for business, then it's an asset. I used to have a car that I was using for business and it was bringing me money. Then my car became an asset. And when I had an accident and that car was totaled, I felt the absence of that car, and it kind of affected me because I had to spend a couple of months for me to go buy another car because I wanted to pay cash. I didn't want to go into financing again. So I spent a couple of months using the public transport, the bus, the train, during the cold. I don't mind, I just do it. And I did it for a few months. I saved that money, I purchased a car. Now all I have to worry about is paying for the whatever that has to, here you have to pay insurance, So now that my other car, when I put into use for it to yield them money for me, either Uber, Lyft, whichever you call it, Instacart or whatever, whichever service that works for you, and it was bringing me money, that car became an asset for me. Right? Because it was bringing me money. So even when I got audited by IRS, I had to provide receipts, provide evidences, so they got off my back. That was it. I even had to provide the receipts of my car note, payment monthly, so that they see where the money I'm making, where it's going. It's not like I'm making that much money and I'm banking it's still going back to some financial obligations that I have, and that was it. So your house, if it's not bringing money for you, that house is a liability. Now, for you to make your house to be an asset is if you have rooms, extra rooms, you put that house to use for like Airbnb, it makes that house an asset because it's generating money from you. For you, from people renting through Airbnb platform. Now, if you look at it this other way, if you have those extra rooms, maybe you have a basement in your house, you decide to rent out your basement. By you renting out your basement and that someone rents it and start paying you on a monthly basis for that space to use them, then that makes that house an asset. because it is generating money for you. Do you understand it now? If you put your car to use for Uber, Lyft, or any form of delivery e-commerce form that you get paid for weekly, daily, or monthly, that makes your car an asset. If you're not, that car is a liability, because if you're not paying car note every month, you're paying insurance. It's a liability. Even if you have the best insurance coverage. Trust me, I have one of the best insurance coverages through State Farm. Yeah, they're good. I use them. And during the course of using them, I had to learn my lesson. I had to teach myself, but that was it. Now, there could be other ways where we can look at this. Let's say, going back to the job and skill. Now, for you to make yourself an asset to your company or to your employer, you have to be an expert at one thing. You have to be very, very good at one thing. And 80 or 75 or 80% good at the general things. Whatever skill that is included in your specification or job specification, job duties, whatever skill that you perform the best at, that makes you an asset. Right? It makes you an asset. When it's time for pay rise, they give you a pay raise based off the fact that you have certain exceptional skills, and that makes you an asset to the company. So they give you a pay raise, which is good. Don't get me wrong, it's good. It's very, very good. Now, when you go into self-development, you learn certain skills. Those skills in turn make you an asset. So when you're in the job market, a lot of employers will be bidding to have you on their team, just because they see the qualities you have, the skills, the exceptional skills you have, the tasks you can perform them excellently well. Okay? Now, let us look at it this other way. For a liability, remember, if it's not bringing money for you, it's taking that money from you, is a liability. Remember that. Okay. Let's look at it this way. When we buy a land, like coming from the part of the world where I come from originally, when we purchase a plot of land, a piece of land, we do call it an asset. No. It's only an asset when we put it to use and it's yielding money for us, whether monthly or yearly. Then it's an asset. But if it is not generating money for us, it doesn't make it a liability. It makes it's called you are hedging your fund. Now, while you are hedging your fund, if the value of that piece of land is appreciating, as the value appreciates, right, that time it makes it an asset. Once the value appreciates, it makes it an asset, a sweet asset, because the value is appreciating, right? Yes. If the value is depreciating, it's making it, yes, even though you are hedging your fund with it, it's called hedge. You're hedging your fund. You don't want your fund to lose value. If the value is depreciating, then it becomes a problem for you. You could consider it a liability. But once you purchase a piece of land and the value of that piece of land is appreciating, but you're not spending money on the land. You're not spending any money to maintain the land. Maybe you spend money once a year to cut it down, or you can allow the vegetation to just grow, natural vegetation. It's not bothering you. You just fence it around and you lock your keys and just leave it. It is called hedging of your funds, right? But when the value of that piece of land is increasing while you're hedging your fund, as the value increases, it becomes an indirect asset, even though you don't have that money cash, but the value is increasing as you're hedging your fund. So you're only hedging your fund against inflation. You're hedging your fund by buying a piece of land against inflationary effects that takes place in every economy. Well, that is what an asset and liability is. Now, when it comes to debt, debt can be an asset when it's a good debt, and a debt can be a liability when it's a bad debt. You can go on and look at the dictionary definition of debt. Debt is when you owe someone. That's just the layman's definition of debt. When you owe someone, when you borrow money from someone, and you have to repay them, then you owe them. That is debt. You borrow money from the bank, it's debt, right? Now, that debt can be an asset and it can also be a liability. How? Because of the fact that something we'll call a good debt and a bad debt. A good debt is a debt that you take to purchase or to invest it into something that will, bring you money later on, right? It makes it a good debt. A bad debt is when you go take a loan from the bank to go do a wedding. You take a loan for a wedding. That is a bad debt. You're not going to make your money back. You're only going to impress your significant other and her friends, his or her friends, depending, right? That is it. It's a bad debt. But when you take a loan for a business and that business yields you money, it makes that loan it makes that debt a good debt. And as it's yielding money for you on a monthly basis or yearly basis, and you're able to service your debt and you still have something left on profit, then that debt now becomes an asset. But if you take one and if the business doesn't work out and you have to repay, it becomes a liability and a bad debt. That is it. You just take your chances. Life is 50-50. There's no way it is written, that this is how it is. If you feel this way, it must work. Just try what works for you. Just because I tried some things and it worked for me doesn't mean that it will work for you. But if it's worth it, it doesn't harm if you can give it a try. Just give it a try and see if it works for you. These are the things that we all ought to, put into consideration at times. Now, let's look at it this other way around. For certain events like when we have certain people talk about certain things and we will listen to them, right? And when we're listening to them, we're looking for the key point they are making to see if it's in line with what we already know. Let's look at it this way. Okay? Let's look at it this way. If you as an individual decide to maybe take a loan for a vacation, what does that make? Does it make that loan a good debt? Because it's going to become a debt when you've not repaid it. That loan becomes a debt, right? Does it make it a good debt or a bad debt? it makes it a bad debt. But if you are going for that vacation and you're gonna do some business there and it will make you some money, it makes it a good debt. If you don't make money there, it's a liability and a bad debt. But if you make money there, it's an asset and a good debt. So that is what it means. Okay, now let's look at it this way. When you borrow money for consumption, it's a liability, it's a bad debt. But if you borrow money for production, it's a good debt and an asset. Simple as that. Remember, there's a precision candidate in Nigeria that his slogan is, we're gonna move from consumption to production. We're gonna move from liability to asset. His name is P2B. Yeah, that's his name. So when you hear that, he's trying to tell you, tell us that we are drowning in liability. We have to move away from the pit of liability to the pit of assets. That is what he's talking about. Okay. With that being said, I hope that we now understand what a good debt and a bad debt is, what an asset and a liability is, right? So, because before we proceed further with wealth creation and the rest of them, we have to take note of these few things. It is very important. We know what an asset is, we know what a liability is, we know what a debt is, good debt and bad debt, and how they all relate with an asset and a liability. I mean, believe we all know this, we now understand what these are. So in the next videos, we'll just go straight into explaining to people certain behaviors, certain habits that we must cut out to be able to focus further on what we can achieve and what we can get for ourselves, and what our goals are, what we set out to achieve in life. Everyone has a purpose, don't get me wrong, we all do. So, but we have to set certain parameters, priorities and all of that, just for us to be able to proceed. So in the subsequent videos, I will just go straight. I had to explain what the channel is and what is we just know. Basically, what we'll be talking about mainly in this channel is wealth creation. So I just want us to know these basic things, because as soon as we pick up the speed, we will not wait for nobody. Okay? Thank you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. This was the IKEMS Finance. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Okay? Thank you.